Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mecca.
Good morning, Vaughn. Thank you. What's up, workaholics? What's up? What's up, Charleston? What's good?
Yeah, what's
Mm-hmm.
going on today? We wanted to talk about three cannabis headlines that we think are attention worthy, or just some things that I actually kind of dragged Mecca into this conversation. So I guess I should more so say that these are three things I saw that were interesting, and I want to get Mecca's input on it. So let's just jump right into it. As you can see right here on the screen, alcohol takes a backseat to cannabis as intoxicant of choice. Off rip, is that surprising, Mecca?
No, that's not surprising. I knew this was going to happen in the 90s.
Ooh, foresight. So why did you know that that was gonna happen? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Because, the whole war on drugs propaganda thing is fake. It's farce. Marijuana is not a gateway drug.
Yeah.
Alcohol is way worse than marijuana. Everyone who ever used marijuana, cannabis, and
Yeah.
alcohol together know alcohol is way more worse to your body, harmful to you than cannabis is. So, knowing that, you know that right out the gate, as soon as you turn 21 years old, as soon as you have your first spliff or your first drink, you know alcohol is worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
when cannabis became legal in certain areas of the states, young adults were able to get that cannabis, and they was like, man, I don't even really want the alcohol. A lot of cannabis users don't really drink a lot of alcohol.
Yeah, they said that just to throw some stats out here about alcohol use, what this article covers, it talks about how nearly 70% of adults say that they drank alcohol in the past year. 70% of adults. Like that's that's kind of insane. Like that means there aren't too many people who have not had a drink of alcohol. Like alcohol is a part of a lot of people's lives in a lot of different ways. And that's really saying something. So nearly 70% of adults said they drank alcohol in the past year, 55% in the last month. Over 14 million US adults suffer from alcohol use disorder, along with over 400,000 youths ages 12 to 17. All right. So just to kind of put that, and then alcohol misuse, this is one of my favorite. Alcohol misuse costs this country nearly $250 million a year. $250 million.
I can believe it.
So going through this article, you kind of jump into like, if cannabis is that big of a deal, is it as bad as alcohol? And a lot of studies are kind of showing that that's not the case. And I think just kind of from personal experience, what you can really look at is that your feeling from alcohol and cannabis are two very different things, right? Like there's not a whole lot of you're not like when you have a hangover from drinking, right? You are suffering. You are suffering the next day. Like it really sucks. Like you're probably down for the count for the next next day.
You're sick.
You're sick. You're literally sick. With cannabis, now I'm not the biggest, like, whether it's THC cannabis, CBD cannabis, definitely CBD cannabis. You're not, there's no psychoactive feel from that. The THC cannabis does have that psychoactive feel, but even in my worst experiences, I guess I could say, there still is no for me. The next day is not like a hangover. I'm not sick as a dog the next day and can't function. I've got some pretty rad stories, but there's nothing. I don't have that experience. Mecca, what about you? How do you?
Hey man, you don't really get sick.
Hey man.
You don't really get sick off of cannabis, but you can if you ingest a large dosage of edibles, and because edibles gets into your bloodstream and certain
sense, right.
organs down there, and once it's in you, it's no getting out. So you may think.
Right.
You may only need 100 milligrams, but you took 1,000 milligrams. Now you're climbing the wall.
Yeah, that's
but
not fun.
It's okay because the next morning you're going to be perfectly fine. There's no one that ever overdosed off of cannabis. I have had my times like that. My first time that I can remember, in my experimenting phases when I was younger, I made some cannabis tea. This is way before Mr. B was ever created. I made cannabis tea. I ingested way too much of it. And I was so sick that I called my mom, and my mom took care of me. I eventually got back to her house, and she took care of me.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah.
You need that though. You need
Yeah,
that. You need somebody to keep you grounded. And I think those are the aspects that are worth talking about when it comes to cannabis and when it comes to people indulging in cannabis. That psychoactive feel, especially when you're dealing with that THC cannabis, but also just the full cannabinoid profile in general. You know, there's still a lot of things to be experienced with just the full profile itself, you know, and understanding how all those cannabinoids work with each other, and especially how they work with THC. But that is something that I feel should be talked about a little bit more when it comes to, and I don't want to paint it as the dangers of, but the experiences of cannabis. Because once again, for someone like me, for instance, I'm not huge on the psychoactive piece. So dealing with that and kind of going through that can sometimes be scary if you're already someone who's prone to anxiety attacks or panic attacks. If you're, as people always famously like to say, you don't know how to let go, man. It's like, okay, well, guess what? Not going to find out how to do it. Not going to figure out how to let go right now. And I need somebody to hold my hand through this process. But all of those things are, once again, much more, I feel like a little bit more social, a little bit more, you know, are you around people that you trust and things like that. But the meat and potatoes of this article is pretty much talking about how people are shifting that the way that they imbibe, if you will. Like
let's get back to this. I think that when I drink alcohol, other than the great taste of alcohol in certain wines and certain spirits and champagnes, you can start feel the pain if you drink too much. You know what I mean? You can start to feel. Eventually, your organs are shutting down. But you can start to feel that pain early on. It just don't happen like all of a sudden your organs shut down. You know, that happens over a slow, gradual process. And cannabis, that doesn't happen. We haven't heard of anyone organ shutting down over cannabis.
Yeah.
So this right here, this is just, you know, the natural evolution of people having access to cannabis more than alcohol, because, you know, alcohol is made readily available to everyone. Right. But with the more access to cannabis, people are making that choice. We're saying, look, I'd rather have this cannabis spliff or this blunt or this bowl before I go to bed than an alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, and I think, once again, this isn't like an alcohol bashing, because we both drink. But we are talking about, like, you know, alcohol abuse and just the way that you feel after you have alcohol. Like, let's be real here.
And
like,
what choice you're going to make.
You know, what choices you're making. But now what I do like that this article talks about is they talk about kind of the dangers of mixing the two. So once you start smoking and drinking, they talk about that, and they had some stats on that as well about how that right there starts to, in this case study, the more that someone smoked and drank at the same time, the more they drank. And that was kind of a result that came through. I'm trying to find it in this particular one, but so it's just pretty much saying that that's also something to kind of be on the lookout for. Now, normally what the trends that people are seeing now, the trends of the industry, rather, of the consumer, is that they're more so choosing that the cannabis over alcohol, but there's still that marriage of the two that kind of sparks a little bit of concern, because it does induce a little bit more of alcohol consumption. So to me,
it's not worse than alcohol and Zoloft. Excuse me. You know what I mean? Certain medicines, they say do not drink alcohol on this. You know. So
right, I can understand that, but I think it's still something that, you know, when we talk about being responsible, you talk about kind of using versus abusing and all of that other kind of stuff. I think it is something to be on the lookout for, just like you would with anything else, sure. But, you know, in regards to cannabis, I do think that it's because now people are talking about, you know, infusing cannabis with beer and, you know, infusing it in that kind of way. And so that's interesting to think about and to see what it is that what are the effects that could happen. Because just like you said, we haven't seen anybody overdose or have these kinds of issues with marijuana. But what happens when you marry the two? What happens if you marry the two over a longer period of time? I've run into a lot of people who they either feel like they're smokers or they feel like they're drinkers. And I haven't come across a lot of like kind of the intertwiners of that, but it's usually people who have more of a preference, like I'm going to smoke more than I would drink, instead of kind of them occurring at the same time type deal. I don't know. But that, I'm not going to say I've got every single experience on the face of the earth, but I think that's kind of where this is getting at. Like what happens with the marriage of those two things. Once again, you could just be in a space where you just act responsibly, but if you are in a space where you're not acting responsibly, then there could be some pretty nasty side effects from that, I think, especially if we're talking about alcohol being involved. If alcohol already is prone, we know that people can be addicted to alcohol, and then you're marrying that with cannabis, then I would say that alcohol is a factor that could kind of turn things up a little bit. So I felt like that was pretty cool, and mainly just because of the fact that, here we are, the consumer is changing things, the industry is changing, the world is changing, society is changing, and we're in a place now where it's like, surprise, surprise, people are choosing marijuana or choosing cannabis more than they are alcohol in these kind of party settings. And I don't feel like that's a shocker. It's a shocker to some people in some states, and some prohibitionists who felt like if you make marijuana legal, then you're going to, alcohol sales are going to go through the roof and all this other kind of stuff. And that's not what happened at all. Like, alcohol sales actually kind of stayed stagnant, or they stayed in their same kind of regard. But, cannabis sales definitely went up. So there you go.
Yeah.
Anything else you got on this?
No, I'm good. I'm good on that.
Okay, cool. So the next that I was going to talk about, Mexico's president says legal marijuana is about freedom as legislation advances in Congress. So we've been hearing a lot about Mexico. They're really kind of pushing forward with legalizing nationwide. And there has been a lot of kind of changing whatever legislation they have in play or wanting to push. There's been a lot of changes in it here recently. But it's all about just kind of figuring out what does this look like in Mexico? What does legalization of cannabis look like in Mexico? One of my favorite quotes from this article was just seeing the president say, things do not have to be prohibited. If something is authorized, if something is allowed, well, act responsibly. I believe that this will happen in this new legislation on the use of marijuana. Have confidence in people and seek good. And do good. I think there's seek good. That's progressive.
Right.
That's progressive. Here you are, encouraging your people, encouraging the nation. And I know that kind of feels like very blanket and very cliche and very, skip through the fields. But truly, I think that when it comes to cannabis legislation, that's kind of where we're at. Like, how are we going to treat humans? And a lot of people, a lot of advocates for cannabis are like, how are we going to make it equal or fair for everybody? Like, where's the social equity? How are we going to promote this so that everyone can have an opportunity? And I think that's a really big conversation that's circulating around cannabis right now. And I think cannabis is the perfect contender to be that kind of poster child, if you will, for people to want to fight for the ability to do business.
Equal justice.
Yeah. Being able to do that kind of stuff. So
right.
Some really interesting things about their legislation so far. The proposal would establish a regulated cannabis market in Mexico, allowing adults 18 and older to purchase and possess up to 28 grams of marijuana, cultivate up to 6 plants for personal use. And Meka, you said that's the same as California, right?
Yep.
So makes a lot of sense, right? We know the relationship between California and Mexico.
Yep.
An additional change mandates that the government clear criminal records of people with past cannabis convictions within 6 months. And we're also going to get into the MORE Act, because the MORE Act also talks about expunging records of non-violent cannabis charges,
Right.
as well.
Right.
And
Because I'm sorry,
go
Brian,
ahead. Yeah.
this is what it's really all about. Like, Mexico is a country that followed America's lead with making these drugs illegal, and it's all about racism and prejudiceness. So we have to right those wrongs, and it's slowly happening. But the MORE Act, that's what it's all about. And with the president of Mexico stepping in and saying that everything does not have to be prohibited. That's all it's about, is about equal justice, equal rights, fighting racism and prejudiceness of yesterday.
Yeah. All tied up into, so it's more than just, being able to smoke a joint out in public,
Right.
Which that's fantastic as well, but it's more than that, it's really a huge symbol of the injustices of the past and things that keep being kind of pushed upon people that are just flat out wrong.
Right.
Another cool part in this article, this is okay, two cool things from this article. Lawmakers also removed the prohibition on owning more than one type of marijuana license. That's a big deal. So that allows for vertical integration for businesses, for cannabis businesses. That is something that is creme de la creme. Like, that's the top. Like, that's what you want.
Right.
Here in South Carolina, you don't really have that opportunity because they won't allow, if you have a retail shop, you can't own
a processing
license. Like you're not able to do that. And allowing for that vertical integration on a whole lot of different levels. And Meka's been doing a lot of research on this.
Yeah.
But one thing that I pull from it is that, first off, just being able to have that ownership, that true ownership of what you're doing, and being able to really have your hands and say so in the process from seed to sale. But what are some things that you like about vertical integration? Meka?
You said it, going from seed to sale, being able to have a processing plant and a retail or grow facility, from a grow facility to the retail, to being able to have ownership in every level of the game.
Yeah.
That's what I think a true entrepreneur would like to seek out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
definitely.
any of their businesses, a lot of times that's a
Unregulated markets.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah. So that was really cool. And then probably one of my favorite parts from this article was, while advocates have celebrated the advancement of cannabis reform through the legislature, talking about in Mexico, they have fought hard for changes to better protect consumers' rights and promote social equity in the legal market. Namely, they remain concerned about high penalties that can be imposed for violating the cannabis rules, and feel the bill should do more to allow opportunities for small farmers. This is just a prime example that legalization is not just we're not just fighting for marijuana to be legal or cannabis to be legal. It has a lot more nuances than just that. That's why having this CBD business has been very important in our lives and impactful in our lives, because there's a whole lot more than just THC. Like, there are things going on behind the scenes that put, these stoppers on people from expanding or growing and being able to let these companies do whatever they want to do just because they have a bigger bag of money. It's at the heart of it, it's just not fair. So fighting for that social equity, just like we said earlier, really fighting against the racism, the racist laws within cannabis laws. And just like how this article talks about the opportunities for small farmers. I actually saw an article the other day talking about how craft cannabis growers could be in trouble just because of the way that the industry is going. Like, when you skip over these craft cannabis growers, because they've got different stipulations and things that they do because they're craft cannabis growers. We got to look out for the small farmers. We have to look out for the farmers in general. Like we've got to do a better job this go around with this particular industry.
I just seen that Vermont is issuing out a license where you can grow personally at home, and that right there is remarkable just for the East Coast. That
is.
You know that the game or the providers of cannabis only they just won't be these large, super large investment groups. You know what I mean? That the regular Joe can grow his own cannabis at home and supply his friends if he like.
Yeah, and not worry about his door being kicked down.
Right.
For especially
being
this
licensed to do
nonviolent
it.
crime.
You know what I mean? Being licensed to do it. That's great.
Yeah, I think that is, and let's just take a second, just once again, to revel in the fact that we're in 2020 and we're talking about having a license to grow cannabis.
Yeah.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty intense. Okay, and then the last article, this was breaking news a couple of days ago. Federal marijuana legislation bill will get a congressional vote next week. That's this upcoming week. So between Wednesday and Friday.
Yep.
House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, I think I said the name right, said the chamber will take up the MORE Act, which stands for Marijuana Opportunity, Reinvestment, and Expungement. That act, sometime between Wednesday and Friday. The floor schedule announcement comes weeks after the leader first confirmed that the House would advance the proposal before the year's end. This is not a drill. This is very this is very important. Having that kind of federal backing, if you will, is a big deal. Once again, just like I talked about with the last article, it is not the end of the road, okay? Because you still have each state that's going to do whatever they want to do. It's really kind of putting more responsibility and more freedom into the hands of the states.
Yeah. What the House is voting on is the feds are going to take their hands off of it and say they're going to leave it to the states. They're going to deschedule the cannabis plant so that cannabis will go under the same scheduling as tobacco and alcohol. Right now it's scheduled in the same scheduling as heroin. So imagine that, marijuana and heroin is scheduled the same.
Right.
So with this vote, the feds are going to back off if it's passed. There's only one person that's standing in the way of marijuana being passed. Basically, there's only one dinosaur left, and that's Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky.
Right.
So.
Right. Here we go. This is from Earl Blumenauer. I feel like I said his name so
Sorry,
wrong.
go ahead.
But over Earl, Representative Earl from Oregon. We were just talking about Oregon. Didn't you said Raekwon opened up a dispensary in Oregon?
Astoria, Oregon. We'll be going there soon. Astoria, Oregon.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
But this guy's been working on legal cannabis for a while, and he says Congress must capitalize on this momentum and do our part to end the failed policy of prohibition that has resulted in a long and shameful period of selective enforcement against communities of color.
Over-policed communities. When you saw the police riding up and down your street 3 or 4 times a day, that's because your community, your neighborhood was being over-policed.
Right. There was cops pulling you over or saying that you have to get out of the car because it smells like marijuana.
Right.
Not a thing. Doesn't need to be a thing. It's extremely racist. It's a byproduct of that over policing.
Racism.
It's all a part of that. And to be, once again, going back to that quote, this is just true. This is just true. Selective enforcement against communities of color. We have the stats that back that up. I say this all of the time, but it's just because it's so, it's always still so mind-blowing to me that Black people are arrested more often than white people in Charleston County alone. Beaufort County, I think, now I'm getting my counties mixed up, but we have a problem here. Like, that's not okay to be in this space where you've got Black people being arrested more for something that statistically they say white people and Black people utilize marijuana at the same rate. That's according to the data. It's just not
White boys have more.
Just not adding up. Really cool part in here. I'm trying to find it. But but it's just pretty much talking about even if far-reaching reform does pass in the Democratic-controlled chamber. Oh, here we go. Bipartisan support. This was another big deal too.
Right.
Oh, look. Here's your boy. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is a champion of the hemp industry, but staunchly opposes further marijuana reform.
So the both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat,
Exactly.
supports legalization of cannabis.
Right.
One dinosaur left, and that is Republican from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell.
But you can tell that that's something that, well, once again, what's the word? I'm going to assume and hypothesize, I guess I could say. But to be a champion of the hemp industry, but oppose marijuana reform, that in itself just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, because they're both cannabis. They're cannabis. And once again, we're picking and choosing between, well, I like this part, but I don't like this part. That's not how this goes. You've got THC that has already been proven to assist medically. You've got people across the nation in various legalized states with medical cards for marijuana, for THC cannabis. You've got this. You've got people that are utilizing this to make themselves feel better, like to actually make their bodies feel better, and not even feel better, but to be better. How do you pick and choose that? How do you not want reform for a plant that is actually assisting people in their day-to-day life? It makes no sense. Like, that makes no sense. You're going to champion the hemp industry, but not support marijuana reform. Okay. Sounds like somebody's either paying you handsomely, like you're tied up in some other realms. Mm-hmm. That's what it sounds like, because it doesn't make sense, and that's my overall point, is that it just doesn't make sense to like this and not like that. Okay. So yeah, those are the 3 articles that I came across that I really enjoyed reading, and just trying to be, up to date, what we got going on. A couple of these articles came from marijuanamoment.com. I would highly, highly suggest that you subscribe to their newsletter, because it's really awesome. It's really great. These guys send out updates every single day about what's going on in the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
They will keep you up to date. If you want to know what's happening with cannabis, these guys really know how to get it done. And they talk about what laws have been passed, or what's being voted on, and what all the way down to, I think on Friday they reported about North Carolina releasing their full list of processors, hemp processors for the state. Things like that's very good information. So, but Meka, do you have anything else that you want to peep in, or things that you've been
very excited for what we're doing. Coming up on 1 year in the business.
Yes, we are.
So yeah, I'm very excited about that. I'm gonna keep my words to myself, and I'm gonna just make this year, you know what I mean, then take it on to higher heights.
How
Appreciate
exciting
everyone.
is that?
Yeah, very excited. Appreciate everyone who supported me. Appreciate everybody, man. Thank you.
How exciting.
Very exciting, man.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Very good.
Exciting.
Yeah. So actually I think it's the LLC for OWO is January 31st. I think I just checked it out. It's
January.
So close.
Yeah.
1 year already?
Yeah. But I was on that road before we got that. We'll leave it.
Well, but I think, I think that I would like to say, that, when we're talking about this, it's just the, creation of something, and then moving forward with that creation and allowing that creation to evolve. There's a lot of, we did our first kind of official drop for Mr. B with kind of website included in September 22nd, or I think the official website was in October. But we were already doing massive amount of work before that time. That's just, Mr. B is just the retail side of things. It's just the retail side of things, and there's been a lot of cool things happening all the way up until that point. So we've actually been working for a year, y'all.
They know.
Ooh! All right, cool. Well, I just wanted to sit down with you, Meka, talk about this. Thank y'all so much. Make sure you should check out MrBCBD.com. Really dig into the good stuff that we got going on. We got some new things coming next week, or I would rather say this week.
Next 7 days.
New strain coming along. Mm-hmm. We're about to restock on some honey bears. You know, y'all love the honey bears.
Yep. Okay,
we got the honey bears coming up. And then we're looking into some more gummies for you guys. So thank you so much for your continued support. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. Thank you. Subscribe on YouTube. And y'all have a great Sunday.
Good job, Vaughn. You're doing great work.
Thanks, Meka. You too. You're doing great work too. All right. Peace out, y'all.
Peace.